Hello again, everybody, and welcome back to Semi-Pro. I'm Dalton Barrett. Joining me are Daniel Savage, Josh Clements, and Aitzen Farouk. And today we watched The Last Airbender.
Didn't watch it.
Movie.
Oh, the fire nation is here.
I'll give Aitzen some grace because he wasn't here last time. The bit doesn't work if everyone does it.
That makes it funnier. It makes it a better bit.
No, then it's not a bit. Then it's just a mistake.
It's more representative
Yeah,
of
that's
the
the podcast. A mistake.
It's more
The movie's
representative.
also a mistake.
It's representative of how chaotic the podcast is.
It makes my
Representative of
brain
how chaotic
hurt.
our brains are.
It hurts my brain when it happens. Yeah,
We watched a movie.
specifically The Last Airbender, directed by.
Well, two of us watched them.
Yeah.
Hold on, no, Josh.
I watched about 3% of a movie.
Hey.
That's pretty good.
Hey, it's not time for this. It's not time for us to be at each other's throats because this week is a celebration, fellas. We are finished with the Shyamalan
It's
suite.
over.
We have
It's over.
1
This is
hour.
how we win.
We have 1 hour left to talk about an M. Night Shyamalan movie, and then we never have to watch another one as
Then
long
we
as
just
we
have
live.
to talk about CGI animals for like the next
I feel
month
like-
and a half.
I feel like Bruce Campbell at the end of Doctor Strange 2, it's over. I'm free. I don't have to do this anymore.
I
I feel
never
like-
knew I could hate M. Night so much. Like, I knew I didn't like or respect him as a director, but
Really?
I didn't know I could actually feel this much genuine hate in my heart for
said-
someone I've never met.
Well, let's
I
save
said
some of this.
Dalton.
I want to do at the end of this both a wrap up of this movie and a wrap up of Shyamalan Sweep as a whole. So save your thoughts on M. Night
You're gonna
Shyamalan.
start rapping?
Yeah, I'm gonna start rapping on the podcast about M. Night Shyamalan.
What is that?
Like the
Was
kid.
this your third rapper personality?
Yeah, it is. Third personality. So we watched The Last Airbender, a movie in which lots of things happen and yet nothing happens, based on a TV show that they crammed the first season of into one movie. And we watched it, and I didn't take notes for the plot breakdown, like I said I was going to.
Dalton, before we watched the movie, goes, okay, I'm going to take notes because I need to remember what the plot breakdown is for this. And immediately forgot because the movie happened.
I do know we open on opening narration.
No, we
Which
opened
is-
on a text call.
We get
Oh, yeah.
right. We get a Star Wars text crawl,
But it wasn't just a
open
text
it with
crawl.
narrate. It was someone also narrating the text crawl.
Yeah.
And
Right,
then after the text crawl, Katara was also narrating the opening bit. I want to tell this movie to shut up, and I didn't even watch it.
Neither did I.
I've never seen a movie that is like pure exposition in the same way that this is. Like this is,
I feel like I have, you know, but it
I-
wasn't my fun
well,
childhood action adventure movie.
Me and you kept on like about at the halfway mark, just started comparing this to the prequels, specifically episode 2.
Oh no!
Like it. This
Well,
honestly
they do.
feels
They
like
do
an
both have a
episode
giant
2.
praying mantis. So, and I didn't watch both of them. So
Daniel, it's time for me to admit it because I know
There
was
I
no
know-
giant
there was no
praying
giant
mantis,
praying
was there?
mantis. The
Hey,
picture I
just
sent you.
You just googled a picture of a praying mantis, didn't
There
you?
was, in
I
his defense,
did.
in his defense, there was a giant lizard. We weren't joking about the Komodo dragon.
So the giant Komodo dragon comes on screen, and Josh says, "Oh, Daniel's gonna hate it. He missed a giant praying mantis." And I said, "Josh, that's a lizard." And he said, "Yeah."
Yeah, giant praying mantis. Yeah.
I don't see a problem with that.
So we open in the ice.
all the
We're in an icy
Yes,
area
we
of
get
the world.
good water CGI.
Yes,
very good
and-
water ball.
Very good water ball and the worst green screen I've ever seen in my life.
Like it really just sets you up for what the movie's
I,
going to say.
I since I didn't watch this movie because my power went out, As I was going to bed, I looked up like just like a playlist of scenes on YouTube, and I think I had like a nightmare that I was living in just the poorly green screened ice world of the Last Airbender. So I was just really fuzzy, and there was like a green outline
You,
around
you,
me.
you know the idea that hell is like your own personal hell where you're experiencing the worst thing just for you.
Right.
Mine is that I exist purely on a green screen. Every room I walk into, there is no reality.
Well,
There's
not just any
a
green screen, just an M
Just
Night
this.
green
A
screen.
Shyamalan green screen.
Where I look at my hand against the wall and all I can see is a thin outline of green
And
around it.
I drink Dayquil and Nyquil at the same time, and now I'm stuck in the Shyamalan green screen.
And it was like, it wasn't even that there was a green line around them. The lighting was off. Like, the lighting did not match
Well,
what was happening, which is a holdover from After Earth, the movie that came out after this.
I said to
Came
I
out
said to
after
Dalton-
Earth.
I said to Dalton, this was probably the first movie that M Night worked on where he had like these fantastical environments on the green screen and stuff, and he just didn't know what to do, so he didn't realize he was meant to be lighting it the same as the background. So he was just like, oh, they'll fix it in post, and then
And they didn't.
they didn't, and he still can't make a movie.
And they decided to put our main characters in fuzzy like parka jackets on the green screen.
Yeah.
When green screen is like famously difficult to do the effect on fuzziness. So they make it fuzzy, and it's bad. It's horrible. Yeah, and then so what's his name, Daniel?
Who? I don't know which character you're
What's
referring
our
to.
character who breaks the ice? I need you to say his name so that we can avoid the joke.
What? I don't know which character you're referring to.
The one who takes his axe and breaks the ice.
Oh, you
Katara's-
mean
Katara's brother.
Soka?
Yeah. He breaks the ice with his pick. And then
The voice crack in Dalton's yeah as he had to fight his primal urge to say it.
so this giant ice ball breaks out of the ground and
Well,
turns
they-
out
they-
there's a child in it.
Well, what he does is they're standing
starts
on
smacking
ice, and directly underneath them, he just takes his little
Machete.
axe, machete, boomerang, whatever, and he just hits it into the ice that they're actively standing on, and is the only thing supporting them and stopping them from a watery death.
And then it breaks
and he spatters it.
and
No,
they
he-
run
he
away
hit
in
the
fear.
He hits
Right.
it with the ice, and he's like, "Oh man, what have I done?"
Oh my
The
gosh!
ice.
Oh my goodness! It is breaking. The ice is cracking. Goodness gracious!
So they run away, and a
run
giant ball of ice comes out of the ice, and inside of it is a child, and this child is Aang, the last Airbender.
Aang, the lost avatar.
And this is where I kind of got. This is where things got a little confusing for me, because I remember the show, right? Because I watched it when I was a child, but I'm not one of those like super fans of it who have binged the whole thing in their adulthood or whatever. Like that's just that never interested me quite like that. And so I remember bits and pieces from the show, and I do remember the next few minutes just being the first episode, but like really sped through and really rushed through and whatnot. But I always had this assumption in my head that Aang was the Avatar because he was the last Airbender, not like because he was defaulted to be the Avatar. Like I thought it was just because he was the last Airbender, he had to be the Avatar because there were no other Airbenders around.
Right.
And I don't know if that's the direction the show takes it, but I my understanding I think is that it doesn't, and I just made that up.
Yes.
Almost definitely, yeah.
Cool.
I think. Well, I mean, so this was. Me and Dalton have both seen it, like the show before, but I think we saw it like years and years and years ago. So
When
I
it
barely
came out.
remember anything. Yeah, I barely remember anything. I never watched it all the way through. I just remember like the first few episodes, and this movie's just kind of. It's the first episode, and then it just tries to condense an entire season of TV into about 50 minutes.
Yeah.
And
Well,
it's
the show came out in 2005, so I would have been 5 when the show
right,
came
yeah.
out.
I would have been that same age then.
Yeah.
So like it's so hard to explain why this movie's bad because it's just
It's hard to explain why this movie exists.
Well, and they didn't
that's
really
right.
adapt, and you can tell, like, it comes across, even if you don't remember the cartoon, they didn't really try to adapt things into a way that would fit more narratively into a movie. They were just like, all right, let's get through these scenes from the show, and we're gonna rush through them. And so Aang comes out of the water. Aang. So he comes out of the water, and the Fire Nation, who we have not really established, but we've kind of established, is like this bad guy threat. I mean, they're called the Fire Nation.
They were established in the opening Star Wars crawl / narration that none of us paid attention or listened to.
Correct. But they're already here. Like, they're already there. And so they kidnap him. And
Sorry, who's
they take him.
Aang.
They take him to. They take Aang to like a water village that they don't establish is nearby whatsoever, and then they kidnap him from there, and they get him to use all the elements or something. They put all the elements in front of him, and they react, and we thought, so he's the Avatar. But,
yeah, I thought that because I wasn't paying attention or listening to the dialogue, and this is when I was still watching the movie. I thought that it was like because he's the Avatar, his avatarness just radiates and automatically affects any nearby elements. But I guess they said they did a little trick on him.
That would make more sense than what they did.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, they say later when you weren't there that like he doesn't seem to know how to bend any of the other elements. So
right, that's what I thought because that's a plot point in the show. But he doesn't know how to bend all of them until the last episode of the final season.
The end of the movie, spoilers alert for this movie no one cares about. It's him training to do water bending. So like he didn't know how to do water bending. So I highly doubt he knew how to do fire and earth bending. So I guess they do just move around the Avatar.
Well, so he doesn't do anything with the candle. He can't do the fire. He only controls the rock.
The fire moves towards him. It gets bigger and it like pulls towards him. Yeah.
Yeah. The rock like floats a little bit and then sits in the
water. The water makes a perfect circle in front of him.
Right, and they go, okay, we're not going to take you home. We're actually going to torture you at our kingdom. Nice to meet you. See you later.
They did a little trolling.
So he breaks out.
He breaks out and he breaks dance, which is how they.
That is true. All of them break dance.
And it's cool, and I like it. We'll talk about that later.
It's something. I don't know how I feel about it. Yeah.
So, Katara and Sokka, they both. They both decide to leave their village to rescue.
I can see Dan's fist is like clenched red right now.
That one meme of the guy just sitting in class
with his neck vein just bulging out. So they decide that they're gonna rescue Aang, and so they take his giant buffalo, and they go to him. The giant buffalo with pretty solid CGI. So they go and they outside of his face, which looks horrible.
For the most part, or when he's in water and they have to do the tail.
The water was fine.
No,
you even said that in our watch potty. You said, "Man, that fur in the water looks good."
Yeah, but the tail, specifically the tail looks very CG.
Okay, Josh.
You don't understand. Josh's opinion is subject to change.
Yeah, I guess that's true.
Like the flip of a coin.
Me and Dalton were talking throughout the watch potty that like whether or not it's practical or because they had a practical stand in sometimes. But the wet fur does look really good. It's just the moving tail that looks kind of CG because they had to actually move it.
Yeah. Anyway, so they rescue him. And then they go to his old home. And over the course of this trip to his old home, nobody ever tells him that it's been 100 years and that all of his family and friends are dead.
This is like 25 minutes into the movie, and he appears 5 minutes in. And like he hangs around Katara and the person whose name I can't say. And they at no point do they ever tell him, yeah, Airbending's been like dead for 1,000 years, man. Where have you been?
They wait until he gets back to his temple.
The Last Airbender.
Avatar. You are the Avatar, the Last Airbender.
They wait until he gets back to his home. And when he's at his home, that's when they say, oh no, you've been in the ice for 100 years. Everyone is dead. And so he freaks out and he goes Avatar mode.
He avatars all over
the Goblin mode.
he goes goblin mode, and the dust starts floating up around him, and he sees a vision of a big snake, and then he falls down and he's sleepy.
And then everyone in this movie looks 5,000 times more bored than you think they would be. And even
No,
when they're trying,
I'd say they're about as bored as I'd think they would be.
well, even in the emotional scenes where Aang is meant to be like oh, he's screaming, he's lost everyone he's ever known. I still just got the sense that he was just like, if I can get through the scene, I can get a paycheck and then I can go home.
He doesn't care about a paycheck. He just wants his lollipop because he's a small child. But yeah, nobody cares. And it's, you compare it to the show, which we really shouldn't be doing. But you compare it to the show, and you've got, like, you know, the character whose name I can't say, and Aang. One of them is the comic relief character who's, like, goofy and funny, and one of them is the super hyper-energetic kid, and he's having a great time, and he doesn't really understand the weight of what's happening, and whatever, and then all of the serious people around them. But in the movie, they're all the same. It's like blank slate. We're going to have cardboard cutouts, and their mouths are going to move. It makes a really uninteresting movie.
You don't want to compare this to the TV show, because inherently, while it is the same thing, you know, if it was just a carbon copy, it's not going to be as good.
It is a carbon copy, but without the stuff that made the show good, which is the characters.
Copy, and they chose to change some things, and the changes that they made were not good. Like, even from because I think you can adapt the show and change a fair few things. Like, as long as you got the core sort of aspects in there. But then they did it bad. They made it worse.
It's not even that they just, like, changed things from the show, because it really is a shot-for-shot remake of the show, but without the characters being the characters from the show. That's what they did.
Right. And characters aren't fun or likable like characters are meant to be.
Right. You have a kid who is supposed to be this savior of humanity, and in the show, he acts like a kid, and that's kind of the fun part. We talked about this in the watch party. Like that's kind of the fun, is he doesn't really understand the weight of what he's doing, and he's super hyper energetic all the time, and he's acting like a child would act. And that's fun when you watch this as a child, because you're like, I'm a child, and he's a child. We're children. But in this, he acts like everybody else, and everybody else just acts like cardboard cutouts. And it's horrible, and I hate it. And over the course of this, we keep cutting back to the Fire Nation, where we see probably the best characters in the movie, but they're not done well. Like, it's not a great standard. Like, they'd be the worst characters in any normal movie, but they're the best characters in this movie.
You could describe the whole movie like that. It's not done well.
Yeah. Where we see Dev Patel as Prince Zuko, who is perfectly cast, I think, like very well cast in that role, despite the fact that the character is boring and uninteresting.
So I looked it up. It's Dev Patel, who's a fantastic actor. He's in a lot of stuff.
Just said
and
that.
Apparently he he would like watch episodes of Avatar: Last Airbender to prepare for this role while on set on Slumdog Millionaire. And I feel bad for him, because he went from Slumdog Millionaire to this.
He really wasted his time there, didn't he?
This movie, it fills me with rage. I'm gonna bite a national at M. Night.
And Sean Tobe, I think is how you pronounce his name.
That's Uncle Hilo, right?
Yes, and he's great.
Oh, he
in
does a
that
great
role.
job, yeah.
He's probably the best acted character. Well, no, second best acted character in the movie. He voiced Jensen in the Iron Man video game from 2008.
I assume he probably played Jensen too, then.
I don't think so. Maybe. I guess
I don't
it's
know.
possible. He's
What do I
not
look
credited
like,
on IMDb as having played him in the movie.
No, he is. He is.
So the guy who plays Jensen from Iron Man 2. Or Iron Man, the first Iron Man, and Iron Man 3, the third Iron Man.
I forgot that he was in that.
Yeah, so anyway, so those two were pretty good. Mr. Aziz from the Spider-Man trilogy is also in it.
Good. I like that.
Well, he's in it, yeah.
And he's our main antagonist, really.
His entire role, and I don't think this is hyperbole, but every single line he says is exposition.
Until the end of the movie, yeah. Until the third act starts, yes.
Even in the third act, he's just exposition, man.
He does some actiony things in the final fight.
What does he do? Because he does. There's that one thing where he throws fire at Zuko and his uncle.
Well, that's his
And then
power. His power is to throw fire. So
Yeah,
yes.
but that's the only thing he does other than spouting exposition.
No, because he's in the final battle at the end of the movie. He's fighting all kinds of people, and then he fights.
Does he do some cool breakdancing moves?
He does do some cool
He does
breakdancing
do some
moves.
cool breakdancing moves. Yeah.
Anyway, we're getting ahead of ourselves. So we keep cutting back and forth between who we feel like is being set up to be our antagonist, our real antagonist, and our protagonist. And we're cutting back and forth between these three. And so they leave where the airbenders are. They leave the temple to go to the earth-bending nation, which they never give any reason for them to go to these different places other than... Because in the show, it was, I need to learn these things.
That's where they went in the show.
Correct, yeah.
That's
I
what
think-
the show did, so they have
I
to
think,
do it.
aren't they trying to get to like the main water-bending city? And I guess to get there, you have to go through these places, even though they have a flying animal that they could just fly there on.
I didn't get that at all,
Correct.
but I guess that is where they end up at the end of the movie, so you're probably right.
I am trying to make this movie make sense. I'm doing my best.
So they go here, and the Fire Nation has like oppressed the Earthbending Nation, or what? Oh no! Oh, okay, I remember. So they're in the air temple, and this little boy comes running up to them and starts hiding behind them, and the Fire Nation's like, he was Earthbending, and he's not allowed to do that. And so then they go into the Earthbending Nation from, I guess it neighbors the Airbending area, and so they go there.
It's all just like next to each other. There's
Yeah.
barely any difference.
So they go there, and Aang gives this big speech about why they don't have to take this because they're standing on Earth and they can move it, which is something they never realized they could do, apparently. So they start fighting back, and it's a really cool action scene. Josh hates it because he hates everything, but we see this really cool action scene that's done in a one take. Where
It's because it's so boring. Like it'd be a fine action scene if there was actual like energy and action to it, but none of the most that the Earthbending do is they slowly move a rock towards one of the groups, and that's about it. Like everything looks so slow. There's no urgency. There's no power to any of these things. They just it looks like it's an effort for them to be alive.
well, it is. They've established that it is an effort for them to be alive.
Well, they
And-
should have changed that.
Okay. Anyway, it's the second coolest action scene in the movie, and I like it. And so they start earthbending all over the place and pulling these giant rocks out of the ground, and it's a really cool one take. And this is the first time we're introduced to Aang with a CGI face.
yeah.
Because there were whole scenes where they would just CGI him entirely so he could do cool flips and whatnot, because he's a child who can't do those things practically. And it's bad. And every now and then they'll like zoom in and close up on the CGI face as he's doing things, and it's horrible. And then and then they win. The good guys win. The Earthbenders, they defeat the Firebenders, and the Firebenders retreat back to their boats or whatever. And that's that scene. And then we cut back to the boat. And is this where Mr. Aziz tries to kill Zuko?
No. This is where Mr. Aziz gets introduced. Because Zuko and his uncle are at like a dinner, and Mr. Aziz is doing a speech where he
This
talks.
is a big exposition scene.
Yeah,
that made God strike down my power and make me stop watching this movie.
Yeah. So there's a big exposition scene where Mr. Aziz is like, Prince Zuko's dad, the king, doesn't like
Zuko.
him. He
And
doesn't like
likes
his
me
son.
more, and I'm his best friend, and he thinks I'm awesome, and he said I'm the coolest, and you should.
I'm so cool and you are so lame.
And you should all listen to me. And then Zuko walks by and he's like, I'm gonna kill you. I'm gonna murder you. And he walks off.
We're gonna kill you.
And then he leaves.
It even looks like that because he like grabs his shoulder and he just like pulls him in close.
Right,
and
it's
says-
framed exactly the same.
and then he sulks off. Zuko in this movie is the template for Kylo Ren.
Kinda, yeah. He talks like Kylo Ren, at least. His voice sounds like...
He dresses just like him.
I know what I have to do, but I don't
know what I have to
do.
My dad hates me.
To do it.
My name is Zuko. My dad hates me.
I'm gonna
My
kill
name
my
is
father. My father's Han Solo.
My
I'm gonna
father.
stab him.
One day my
I'm gonna
father will
stab
take me
him.
back, and I will kill you for it.
I'm gonna kill him. The Last Airbender.
When was
That's what he talks like. So he storms off and he walks away, and it's at this point when our good guys get to the main waterbending city after given a map by the Earthbenders. So they're given this map of, or it's not even a map, it's like a tutorial scroll on how to waterbend. So Katara starts showing Aang a little bit on how to waterbend. He doesn't really get it because she's not a great teacher, so he's not really understanding quite what he's supposed to be doing. So they decide to go to the main waterbending city. So they fly there, and they get there, and then they were followed by the Fire Nation. At some point between this, Mr. Aziz tries to murder Prince Zuko because
by blowing
King-
up his room.
because the king dude was like, hey, if he finds the Avatar before you know, then
he is my best friend
then
now.
he is
and
my
you are
best
not
friend
my best
now.
friend.
Correct.
Is that the scene where he walks alongside the king and then they stop and they like turn to
Yes.
face each other and then they walk 5 more steps and then they stop and they turn to face each other again?
Mr. Aziz gives him some exposition while they're stopped. All right. And he tells him like all of what's happened. And then they take 4 steps forward. And then Fire Lord Azai, or however you pronounce it, stops and turns back to Mr. Aziz and then gives him some exposition of, hey, if my son kills the Avatar, then you lose your job. And I don't like my son, and I like you, so I want you to kill him first. And so then they go away.
Honestly, be real for that.
I mean, yeah, he at least told him. And so that's when Mr. Aziz decides to kill Zuko. And so he tries to, but it doesn't work. And then the Fire Nation decides to go meet our good guys at Waterbending City. That's in the ice.
We're making this movie sound like it moves along pretty well. It doesn't.
So, I will say the
first
first
half.
half of this movie, for as incompetent as it was and as much exposition, somehow moved along at a pretty solid pace. By the time we get to the waterbending city, everything freezes. And this is also when I noticed something interesting about the movie. I know it was a big like topic of controversy that Aang was played by a white kid. I looked it up. Turns out he is Native American, which is weird. Not weird, but it's like just interesting that
Yeah, it was a
is
little
a
weird.
thing.
While we were watching it, Josh tried to gaslight us into thinking that he was Asian.
Mm-hmm.
It was really weird.
It was odd. And the people in the waterbending nations are all played by white people, but each nation seems to have its own like race. Because all the Earthbenders are of Asian descent. All of the Firebenders are like Middle Eastern kind of. So I would assume that you know, I guess maybe all of the Airbenders are Native American, maybe. Which would have been a really interesting thing to explore had they actually done that.
Well,
like
I think the show, most of like the waterbending like culture was based on like Native Americans.
Yeah. Well,
because they're like Eskimos, right? So they've got you know, so that would have been fine. Do that. I don't mind. And I think it would have been a really interesting thing to explore, to have this be based around racial tension, if directed by someone who wasn't M. Night Shyamalan, because he's tried to do that and it's never worked.
No, it totally worked out. It worked out so well. It's the greatest. He's the best at this.
True.
But there would have been something neat to explore there with like all of these different cultures are their own races. And with that comes these powers that they have specifically, and they don't get along. And that's where the conflict comes from. But they just didn't do that. They like had a semblance of that happening, in that the different people in the different bending areas are of different races, but they didn't go into anything with that. And so I don't mind that as a concept. It's a neat idea that they could have explored, but they didn't. And I didn't realize. I realized this at this point. It has nothing to do with the movie because at this point I thought, oh, maybe that's something that they're going to elaborate on. And then I thought half a second about it, and I was like, no, they're not. So we're in the Water Nation, and the folks there start to teach Aang how to manipulate water with his brain and his movements. And he's not really getting it, but he's kind of getting it. Like he's starting to learn a little bit. That's when the character who I can't say the name of meets Princess. What was her name? Princess Yu.
Girl who gets turned into the moon.
Girl who gets turned into the moon. Yes. So he meets.
Girl who has a pecker head.
Correct.
Huh?
Her hair, like when
her
the
hair is
reveal
very
shot of
suggestive.
her, it's shot from behind, and the way that her hair is done up looks a lot like a certain phallic object. Wait, Dan, I'm going to send you a picture. I want you to see this.
I remember us saying when we watched it, like, man, I wish Daniel was here to see this. So he meets her, and she gives this scene, and she's the best acted character in the whole movie because this actress really is able to.
Oh wow, yeah, no, I just found the picture. Wow,
yeah,
she's really able to like do some stuff. She's been in some other things.
She's the one who has any energy and any any charisma, any charm whatsoever. It's just her. No one else in the movie has anything going for them.
She's been in some other stuff. Here and there. She was in the Tomorrow War with Chris Pratt.
Yeah.
She was actually in Legend of Korra, the sequel show to Avatar: The Last Airbender. So she's been in some stuff, which is cool. I'm glad this didn't murder her career as much as it could have.
The main guy from this hasn't been in anything, has he?
No, I'm pretty sure he's dead. Like not legitimately, but that's just kind of.
He also wasn't like really like an actor. He was just a guy who.
Well, he was in Cowboys Cowboys and Aliens after this.
Yeah, but as like a background character, I think.
I don't think so.
I do feel like I remember him being like an actual character. Like he was the kid.
He was the kid who like traveled along with them in that movie.
Yeah.
The one thing I remember is that he got the part because he sent a picture, like a video to M. Night Shyamalan of him doing martial arts with a shaved head with the arrow drawn on him. And then M. Night was like, yeah, I'll cast this guy. And that's cool. And I think that's, it's wholesome. It's a kind of wholesome story. But maybe sometimes you should probably go for the best actor when you're trying to launch a franchise.
Well, he wasn't bad. I will say, like, he's not
far
from the worst
actor in the movie.
Yeah.
It's not his fault for how bad he is. Like he's doing his best, and I appreciate it.
So this is when Princess Yu introduces us to some fish, and she's like, "Yeah, when I was a baby, I was born dead, but my mama put me in this pool, and now my hair's white."
When I was born, I was not awake. The phrasing of that really annoys me, and I can't quite pin why.
Everything annoys you, Josh.
Stupid.
This movie annoys me. I'm annoyed because I've had to spend the last 4 weeks watching M. Night Shyamalan movies I don't want to watch.
This is true.
So she's like,
although
yeah,
you did start this, so
this was your idea.
I maintain that the happening is fine.
You shouldn't. Anyway, so she's like, yeah, this fish, it gave me its life force or whatever, and so now I'm alive by the power of the moon. And it's a whole thing. And so they exposize that to us, and then they go up, and her and character who I can't name have this like slight romantic thing that I know they have because it's in the TV show that they have a slight romantic thing, and not so much in this movie, except for the fact that she's the only character who acts like a character, and he only acts like a character around her.
It's like he's doing an impression of Hayden Christensen from the prequels. Like
it genuinely does. This is when the movie starts to feel like Attack of the Clones, because it's like
there's a lot of bad green screen, and it's two people who do not have chemistry with one another.
And there's a giant praying mantis, and Ewan McGregor rides it around. It's exactly the same, almost beat for beat as Attack of the Clones.
Ewan McGregor comes out and just starts fighting people with a sword.
And he says hello there, but it's just as uninspired and forced as it was in the finale of Kenobi. Where it feels like somebody's holding a gun to his head. It was crazy.
I bet whoever wrote that, like whoever put that in, felt so good about themselves.
Oh, they
like, oh, this is so clever. This is such a clever little reference.
they would like gave themselves a pat on the back, and they were like, "Oh, this is it. This is the one."
And
You
Ewan
hear that?
McGregor read it, and he almost dropped out of the movie or the show. Like he was like,
He read
I'm not doing this.
The movie, The Last Airbender.
Yeah,
He,
yeah,
he
right,
read
right.
it. He read it, and he just thought, "Do I really want to do this?"
Do I have to? It was also like when they read the scene where when he's fighting, he puts up his two fingers, and Ewan McGregor read that one too, and he was like, "Man, really? Like I've gotta do
Okay.
that again."
I like the two finger stance, right? I'm a fan of that. I'm not gonna bully that part.
I will.
I will. Anyway, we're not talking about Kenobi. We're talking about The Last
Well,
Airbender.
I wish we were.
Wish we were talking about Kenobi.
We're talking about Kenobi.
We were.
I like the part where he
Dalton
said,
kept on-
"I'm gonna Kenobi all over you guys."
me and
So-
Dalton kept on saying, like when we were watching this, we kept talking about anything but the movie because it was infinitely more interesting than whatever the movie was trying to do to us.
Well, it was one of the worst commentary tracks that's ever been made because we weren't talking about what was happening. We were talking about the movie as a whole. Like we were just talking about the concept of this
Well, that's
movie's
what-
existence.
What happened was it was scene with exposition, scene that was furthering the exposition that was just said, action scene with exposition.
So Zuko comes in and he decides to come in through the ice because he can use his chi to warm the ice or something. So he pops up and he fights Aang a little bit, and then what's her face? Katara, whatever. She
This is
freezes him.
Katana. She's got my back.
Freezes him, and then Aang like lets his face free, and he's like, "Hey, if you leave now, you can live. Like we're gonna kill all these people." This
We're
is
gonna
immediately
kill you.
after he had a meeting with a giant snake that told him not to hurt anybody, and he's like, "Hey, if you leave now, you won't die because we're gonna kill all y'all." And
the snake says, "Hey, don't hurt anyone. Use the power of water to show them the way." Like, okay, fair enough. And then subsequently after that, he murders everybody.
yeah, he goes on like this killing spree where he's just murdering people. And this is also a really cool action shot because as the Fire Nation is attacking, we get to see like basically this battle play out. And it's a really cool scene and it looks great. For the most part, the CGI is good. The worst part is the green screen, but we don't see a ton of it.
They do
Apparently-
a good job of not showing his face as much, which they did in previous ones,
Yeah.
which gave away the CGI-ness. But they keep him like back turned the whole way, so it's much
Apparently, in that cool action scene, I was looking at the goofs section on IMDb, which is the longest goofs section I've ever seen on IMDb. I think it's the longest of all the sections on IMDb for this movie. But in the goofs section, it says that in that scene, it pans and you can see a Fire Nation soldier ninja member just fighting the air. Absolutely no one.
Nice.
Which I thought was funny.
Another Star Wars reference.
I,
Man, this movie want to be prequels so bad.
I looked up the trivia, and the second top thing on trivia was Dev Patel expressed dissatisfaction with the final movie. And I just, it's such
I wonder
Uh,
why.
it's such a, me too, Dev.
and,
I feel that.
and so we see, so this is all happening. It's a really cool battle scene. It's a really cool fight. It goes on for quite a bit, which is a little longer than I wished it would, but whatever. And I only say that because I was wanting the movie to end. And so Aang goes full Avatar mode. Mr. Aziz kills the moonfish, and so then nobody can do their power anymore.
They like the water benders get power from the moon, I guess, because the moon controls the waves.
Right. Because of
Um,
the tide.
Yeah.
Science. Yeah.
Yeah,
Which, but also, Pekka Girl is connected to the fish.
Well, right, because that's she was born not awake.
Yeah, she was born not awake, and the fish gave her life. So she, after Mr. Aziz stabs the fish, she gives her life back to the fish, and then the fish is fine. So that scene goes on for like 5 minutes where the fish is dead, but then the fish is back. Which I remember being a whole episode of the show. Like I remember it being like an entire
It was
episode.
like a two-parter, like it ended on like a
Yeah.
like a cliffhanger.
Yeah.
I think
And
that was like the finale of the first season, I think.
something like that, yeah. And so the fish is back, and Aang can do water now well. And
Nah, this is real.
not only can he water bend a little bit, he can lift an entire wave, like a wall of water out of the ocean to scare away the Fire Nation. And so they all run away, and then the people who are left on there, the ones who didn't retreat, the Fire Nation people, everybody bows to him, which is something we set up earlier in the movie. Like when he was chosen to be the Avatar, everybody bowed and he ran away. That's how he survived for 100 years in the ice. So he caused all of this to happen. And so everybody bows to him, and then he very nervously bows. And I think that's when they're going to roll credits, but no, they got to set up a sequel. And so they go to set up a sequel, and
then the movie got canned within 2 days.
right. Prince Zuko's daddy, played by Cliff Curtis, he's all like, hey, I want you to do it. Like, I want you to handle it. Because Mr. Aziz is dead. He gets drowned in a big water ball, which was a
Mr.
fun
Aziz
scene.
Get drowned by 4 random people in a water ball, which is a horrifying way to die, for one thing.
He keeps
I don't know.
no, genuinely, it's horrifying because he keeps swimming up, and as he's swimming up to get out of the water, they just move the water ball up with him. So he's just constantly swimming upwards while being drowned.
It feels really out of place.
That's the most sadistic thing I've ever heard.
Yeah,
me.
The entire movie, like, it's not heavy, really. Like, you know, they don't really speak. There's internment camps, but there's internment camps in the movie, in the show too. But like,
Right.
this just
But it's still meant to be like a lighthearted children's program.
And they just go no and drown him in a pool of water, and his dead body just collapses on the bridge, and these 4 guys walk away with like nothing to say. I was just like, okay.
Yeah.
M. Night, dog, you good?
Yeah.
Most sane M. Night moment.
And so we set up a sequel, and we don't really even have to talk about it because who cares? And then
Because the movie got cancelled.
and then the movie
Nah, bro,
ends.
the sequel's gonna happen. Just wait.
And then the movie ends, and it's over, and it's great, and I'm so thankful that it ended because that means, boys, we're done with
It's over.
Shyamalan Suite.
Now we can watch
Stuart Little,
Animals.
which is also
And
an M. Night
Yogi Bear
Shyamalan
too.
movie, and Yogi Bear too, yes, and Garfield, A Tale of Two Kitties. I'm so happy that we're done. You have no idea how happy I
I'm so
am.
excited to watch anything other than
It feels
an
like
M. Night
it feels
movie.
like a knot in my back just got released.
It's like for the past month and a half or so, I've had this weight just on my chest. Not like a metaphorical weight. It's like somebody sat an
like an
elephant
actual weight.
on my chest.
It's like M. Night has wrapped his hands around my throat constantly, and it's just been squeezing tighter and tighter and tighter, and now we're done.
And it's over. Like it is no more. We've done it. We've finished Shyamalan Sweep. So let's give some final thoughts on this movie for about 10 minutes or so.
Is gone,
And then
Everything is better now.
We'll spend about 10 minutes talking about Shyamalan Sweep as a whole and how it changed us as human beings. This movie for me, and I said this a lot, this movie, it's sort of the 2010s equivalent of what franchises are trying to do today, where like today they're trying to copy the MCU. And they're doing this thing where they'll try to set up this universe, but they don't do it right because they don't set up the movie first. And this is what happened before that. If you don't remember this time period, everybody wanted to be Star Wars because the Star Wars prequels had just wrapped up and they made a bunch of money. And they wanted to do the original trilogy of Star Wars thing where each movie is its own act in a 3-act structure. So like New Hope is the first act, Empire Strikes Back is the middle, and then the conclusion would be Return of the Jedi. And that movie works really well. That trilogy works really well in doing so. But what people failed to realize in trying to do that is the first movie in your franchise also has to have a 3-act structure in it. And this movie doesn't. This movie is all set up for the sequel.
What they realize is that their movie has to be a movie.
Right. And this movie just doesn't do that. There's no structure to it. We're just gliding through scenes so that we can get to the sequel, basically so that we can get to the third movie where we have a conclusion. And that was a big thing for a while, and it never really worked outside of Star Wars because Star Wars had a even the prequels tried to do the same thing, and it also didn't work because you have to have a 3-act structure to make movies work. And so this movie really tried with that, and it's a shame because this could have been a huge franchise. I mean, you look at like your Harry Potters and you look at like your Star Warses and those movies that are these huge sprawling franchises. This could have been one if it was made better, but it just wasn't. It was made very poorly. They made a lot of weird choices, like having your comic relief character not be a comic relief character and having your child character not act like a child. Yeah, and there was just a lot of choices that were just poor when it came to the making of this movie. And I don't know. I think there's something here. I'm excited for the new Netflix show because I think it'll be fun. If they make the right choices, and I think they will. It seems like they will. But as far as this movie goes, I will be happy to never watch it again.
Right. True. This movie is frustrating because it's got the groundwork and the idea of this great show and this great franchise that it could have been, and which it probably is going to be because they're doing the new live action one. But like, you're watching it and you're just like, this is not a movie. This is just exposition followed by more exposition and more exposition and people who aren't being directed well. Like no one in this movie feels like they're in the same film as anyone else.
Everyone's because it's an M. Night movie.
Yeah, it's an M. Night movie. No one talks like a human. No one knows how they're meant to be reacting. And I'm glad to be done with it.
Yeah. Yep.
Thank Christ it is over.
I said this to Dalton yesterday. 4 weeks ago, I thought M. Night was this guy who made a couple of good movies and then just made some pretty mid ones, right? Like I didn't care about them, but
what an understatement.
I didn't actually.
Josh, we need to let Daniel do his Last Airbender final thoughts, and then we'll do the M. Night final thoughts
for the 20 minutes that he watched.
Daniel, you got 3 minutes.
I didn't hate the 30 minutes of this movie I watched. I probably would have hated it if I had watched more than 30 minutes.
I will say, I didn't say this. The action scenes are cool, regardless of what Josh has to say. Watch a supercut of those. I think they're cool. The special effects are cool.
Yeah, that's what most of the scenes I watched before going to bed or while going to bed were mostly like action scenes. I liked the dancing was dumb and corny and bad, but I liked the idea. I liked the one of the I think it was like the waterbender guy in the second waterbender village that was teaching Aang how to waterbender. He did like a little 2-step with his feet and then kicked a water ball. That was pretty cool. I liked that. And that's all my thoughts. In my head, all of them. They're all
okay. Now we can talk about Shyamalan as a whole and how this has changed.
I hate him.
Oh, one more thing.
That block is not enough.
I want to introduce our new rating scale. I didn't discuss this with you guys before. We're gonna rate this as either best movie ever or worst movie ever.
I wonder which one we're all gonna say.
For this movie, I'm going with worst movie ever.
I think I am going to have to second that opinion.
Even from just the 30 minutes you watched?
I'd say so, yeah. And I have a very distinctly negative memory of this movie. Like this is the closest to a traumatic memory I have is watching this movie after watching the show as a child, because it's such a drop off in quality. Like it's painful and traumatic to a young child who is very emotionally invested in a TV series.
I am going to say that this is the best movie ever.
I hate you.
I think perhaps you are being a bit of a contrarian, maybe.
No.
Give a reason. Josh, why do you think this is the best movie ever?
Mind your own
Well,
business.
I think that's none of your business.
Okay.
Walks into
well,
discussion.
Well, you know,
Says Avatar: The Last Airbender is the best movie ever made. Refuses to elaborate.
good CG,
Mm.
uh, uh,
That's-
good action scenes, according to you. Uh, um, I feel like I do not need to elaborate further.
Okay.
You do.
Well, it doesn't matter because you lost anyway. Because me and Daniel both voted it worst movie ever. So, worst movie ever, Avatar: The Last Airbender. Cool. Now, final thoughts on Shyamalan. Josh, you can go first because you're the reason we're in this nightmare to begin with.
Right. I just said one of the movies, okay? Just
No, the sweep was your idea. You don't get to do this. You don't get to say like, no, I just said The Happening. Shyamalan, you did this to us.
I'm gonna say it's your fault. But the before 4 weeks ago, when all I knew of Shyamalan was Unbreakable and Sixth Sense and The Happening. I thought, hey, he's this guy who made a couple of good movies and then made a load of mid movies. So what do you know? And then the last 4 weeks have told me just how much I despise M. Night Shyamalan movies. And he seems like a lovely man. He seems like a very nice guy. He's just a psychopath who doesn't know how to make a movie and doesn't know what a movie looks like or how humans act or what humans act like to each other. And I just this last month has caused me so much pain, so much heartburn, really.
Heartburn.
And heartburn.
I'm not sure that's the movie doing this. I've heard the things you order from DoorDash.
Heartburn in my soul. These movies have
This
caused
movie
me.
has given my soul heartburn.
And
Banger.
I am no.
Okay,
Cool.
fair enough.
Daniel, final thoughts on Shyamalan.
I wish I could travel back in time a month to when I was blissfully ignorant to how much I hated M. Night, because I knew I didn't like or respect him as a director, but I at least didn't hate him as a person. And I don't like hating people because I want to like people, but M. Night just, he brings out the worst in me, and I want him gone.
So
But
we have,
I like Unbreakable.
he gives me heartburn and he brings out the worst in me. Wow. How do I top that, It's like where do we go from here? So when we sat down to do
Down.
Shyamalan sweep, we watched The Happening. And I was very negative on The Happening, but in hindsight, it's probably
crazy that The Happening is the best movie we watched. And I said that jokingly at the beginning, but it actually turned out to be the truth.
So Dan is the soothsayer.
It's like I really didn't care for either Old or The Visit because I'm not a huge horror guy. And so those movies had nothing that appealed to me. After Earth, I thought like, okay, this one will be more fun. And it was kind of more fun from a visual and special effects standpoint.
But it was just as boring.
But it was boring. And then this movie is just so much wasted potential. And Shyamalan has this way of taking concepts and ideas that are fascinating and could be really good movies. And they're not even usually his ideas. They're usually somebody else's. And then just making them not good. Because what? Let's see. Old was based off of a short story. The Visit was an original idea, right? After Earth was somebody else's concept that he wanted to make a sci-fi movie, but we can't even really credit him with After Earth because that was Will Smith. And then this is based off a TV show. I don't have heartburn. I think I'm dead. Like,
I'm dead in my soul. I'm dead in my will. My will to live is gone. This how M. Night Shyamalan ruined me.
It's just fascinating how inept, because I don't know that we'll be able to take another director unless it's like a Neil Breen or whatever, and just find 4 movies. Number one, I'd have significantly more fun with a Neil Breen sweep. But anyway, I just don't think we'll be able to take one director, especially one who's got this many movies under his belt, who's this big of a director, and watch 4 movies in a row that are this bad. Like, I just don't think we'll be able to do that because it's such an anomaly that they keep letting him make movies.
He can't keep getting away with it.
I want to see what blackmail he has on the studio executives. That he walks into a room and he's like, "Hey, I am going to make After Earth. It's going to be Will Smith and his son." And then he just throws all of these photos of them doing horrible acts onto the table and just walks out. And they're like, "Well, I guess we have to give him the movie now."
Well, after this one, it should have been done, right? Like after Last Airbender, they should have been like, okay, yeah, we're never letting you make a movie ever again. But then they let him make After Earth, right? And he made After Earth, and that should have been the last straw. They should have been like, okay, you're never making another movie ever again. And then he made The Visit, and he made it, and that should have been the last straw. They should have said, okay, you're never allowed to make another movie ever again. But then just last year, he made Old. And it came out, and he's got another movie coming out, and it's like, why do we keep letting you make movies?
So that's what I mean. Like, M. Night seems like a lovely man, but I want to know what deal with the devil he made. Because any other director, if they had as many consecutive flops as he has had, they would not be working anymore. They would
be hanged.
They would be chased out of Hollywood. So I don't know what he's done that, like, how much do these people
He's got some dirt on someone.
He has to. I refuse to believe otherwise. Because there's no way. He's got a movie coming out next year called Knock at the Cabin. That's got Batista, Jonathan Groff, Rupert Grint, all these people who are in movies. And he's still making movies. He's still doing it. I don't know why. I don't know how. I
want it to stop.
I just don't
Please.
want it. I'm begging you, M. Night, please.
It's like...
All right, it is like
best sweep ever or worst sweep ever? Because here's the thing. We talked about this. We've got some doozies lined up of things that we're going to have to sit through. I don't think it gets worse than this. I genuinely don't.
No, I think this is the worst sweep, at least that we have planned out for the next 5 years.
It's like, because we're doing some things where we're gonna watch super low budget animated movies and like knockoffs of Pixar.
That will at least be fun.
That's what I'm saying. Like the fact that these made in Hollywood, publicly released movies are gonna be the worst things that we sit through.
I don't know. The Riddick sweep in about 4 years might be pretty tough to get through.
The what?
The Riddick sweep.
The Riddick sweep. The Vin Diesel
do you not
trilogy.
know about the Riddick sweep?
I do not.
It's cool. This is like 5 years down the line.
We'll get there.
This is well into like season 4, I think.
What are we doing? Pitch Black, Riddick, The Chronicles of Riddick.
We're doing all 3 Riddick movies, and then
Last Witch Hunter.
and then the no, we're doing Xander Cage. I think that's for the Vin Diesel sweep.
It doesn't matter right now.
Just you wait until we get into the Transformers sweep.
Well, no, that one's gonna be good.
It's just so baffling because I feel like I've wasted a month of my life. Like we've been doing this podcast where we're talking about movies for like a year now. We've just started to structure it a little more and do these sweeps. Never have I felt like such a chunk of my life was wasted.
I feel actively drained. Like
because usually,
gang.
even when we watch bad things, which is the theme, we have fun doing it and we have fun talking about it. But I have not had fun. The last time I had fun was Daddy's Home 2, and that was so long ago.
That is saying something.
Oh, man, I wish we were still watching Daddy's Home 2. But we can rejoice because it's over.
I had the best sleep I've ever had after watching this movie.
Because it's done.
Because
no more.
Done. It put me to sleep, and I realized I didn't have to watch M. Night Shyamalan movie.
I can go the rest of my life and never watch another M. Night Shyamalan movie.
Well, until next year when we all go to see Knock in the Cabin.
Haha.
Yeah, I think perhaps.
You're
will
so
not be
funny,
watching
Josh.
Knock in the Cabin. All right, boys. Thanks for slugging through these Shyamalan movies. We're done. It's over.
Make it stop.
Next week, everybody, tune back in as we watch Stuart Little, which is also a Shyamalan movie, but he only produced that one. I'm so excited. There is a Shyamalan twist in that movie. We'll talk about it.
It's more of a Shyamalan movie than After Earth is, and probably than Last Airbender. Because I don't think does Last Airbender have a Shyamalan twist?
The twist here is that you expect it to act like a movie.
Yeah.
All right. If you are watching on, or if you're listening on any of our streaming platforms, on our YouTube channel, we have a commentary of me and Josh and Daniel for a little bit, and then just me and Josh watching through this movie in what we're calling the Watch Potty. We're going to try to do that every time. We live stream those on Thursdays. Thanks for listening. I don't know why you would actively choose to listen to us talk about Shyamalan movies, but we're done. It's over. We'll see you next time. We'll see you next week while we watch.
Thank you, based God. I love you, Lil B.
While we watch Stuart Little.